You're listening to the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse at bellydancegeek.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 36 of the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse. That makes this our third anniversary episode. This episode is being sponsored by Amity Elise, who is the author of 3 business ebooks for dancers: Hosting Dance Workshops 101, Dance Teacher 101, Business Basics and Tips for Independent Dance and Fitness Instructors, and the Dance Studio Startup Kit, Planning for Success. All 3 ebooks were inspired by my guest tonight, Julie Eason, so if you want to see a great example of what you can accomplish with her advice, you can check them out at rockon.net. That's RAQ-ON.net. And you can continue on to /index.php/store/ebooks-for-professional-dancers. Or if that's a mouthful, go ahead to rockon.net. Again, that's RAQ-ON.net. And then from there you can go to store and ebooks for professional dancers. The Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse is a place where dancers can get together and geek out on all of those things that are hard to get in classes and DVDs. If you want help with the what, so things like moves and combinations and choreographies, it's really easy to find resources. But if you want help with the why and the how, so things like professionalism, business, communication, musicality, culture, that can be harder to find. So every month I interview a different guest expert on another geeky topic, and we always have time for question and answer so you can geek out too. So if you think that knowledge and creativity go together like chocolate and peanut butter, you are in the right place. My guest tonight is Julianne Eason. Julie is a belly dancer, professional writer, and founder of the Belly Dance Business Academy. When she's not teaching dancers how to run more profitable businesses, she's a ghostwriter for all kinds of business people. Her latest book, The Profitable Business Author, teaches readers how to write, publish, and profit from books that make a difference in the world. Every business can benefit from having a book, even belly dance businesses. So check her out at julianneeason.com. That's JulianneEason.com, or at bellydancebusinessacademy.com. And tonight, Julie is going to talk to us about writing for a dancer audience. So welcome, Julie.
Yay, Nadira! Congratulations on 3 years. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. And I want to add a little something.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I think everybody who's listening should know that you are the reason we are here tonight, for 2 reasons. One is that when I was first toying with the idea of creating the clubhouse, I did a private coaching call with Julie, and we talked about the options and how to go about it and what kind of strategy and naming to do, and that was a big part of why this has been so successful. So if you're enjoying these, you have Julie to thank. And the other layer goes back even farther. The whole reason that I stepped out from my local area and put myself in front of the larger community was with Julie's encouragement, support, and specifically coaching. So if you are looking to make that leap too, check out bellydancebusinessacademy.com. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so happy it's you for my 3rd anniversary.
Me too. Hi, everybody.
So can you tell us a little bit about your origin story? How did you get started in belly dance?
Okay, so I danced my whole life, really, like a lot of people who find belly dance. Some people find belly dance later, but a lot of us, we started with ballet, tap, jazz, all of the things that you get to do when you're anywhere from kindergarten age up through high school. And I lived in New York. I didn't dance in New York City, but I did dance in a regional company, and we had a lot of New York City ballet dancers would come and guest dance with us, and they would be in our shows and things. So dance was like my whole life for a very long time until I got to high school. And it was in a time when it was like the late 1970s, early 80s, when anorexia was a big deal in dance, and there was just a whole lot of like you had to torture yourself to be a dancer. And so that was the mindset that I had, and it was like, okay, I'm going to live and breathe and eat and sleep dance. That's all I want to do is dance. I don't want to do anything else. I mean, I was like a straight A student. I had no problem with school, but all I really wanted to do was dance. Wanted to be a dancer. Told everyone I was going to be a dancer. And then high school hit, and I got boobs, and I got hips, and I got all of the things that happen when you go from being, a middle schoolish age dancer to, okay, now it's time to separate people. it's time to separate the people who get to perform from the people who can't for whatever reason, or maybe they're not the right body shape, maybe they aren't strong enough on point yet, or whatever it is. But ballet was my whole life, and I call myself a ballet refugee because what happened was I moved out of New York and into Virginia, and I moved to a place where there was no dancing, and my whole life fell apart. Like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with my time. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was like, if I can't dance, who am I? Like, it was my whole identity for a very long time was dance, and specifically ballet. And so I got through high school by my mom was the drama teacher, so I got to choreograph all of our plays, and we did a lot of musicals and things. So that was okay. It got me, through. Then I went to college, and I figured out, that like the promise that they tell you when you're in a dancing school as a child, they don't tell you that once you get to college, you're done. Like, there's nothing for you. It's a lot better now, but back then there was nothing. If you weren't going to continue on in a college dance situation, or you were going to be a professional, there's nothing for you. And really, I had no chance to be a professional. I had surgery on my feet. I had the wrong body shape. There was no way I was going to be professional. However, I was involved and still am involved in the Society for Creative Anachronism. For those of you who don't know, it's a medieval recreation organization. And we had a belly dancer come to one of our feasts. And I watched her, and I was like, I can do that. She's flat-footed. I couldn't go on releve because of the surgery that I had on my foot. She was flat-footed. She didn't do any high kicks. She wasn't going crazy with the movements and everything, but what she was doing looked like a lot of fun. And I was like, I can do that. And so one thing led to another, and over time I just sort of found the dancers that were in the society. There weren't a whole lot of us then, but there are now. There's tons. We just sort of grew, and I followed them and learned from them, and then I learned about this whole world of workshops and professionals, and I would go to Morocco and Amaya and Bert Balladine and all of these big time stars. I was like, I get to learn from them. This is awesome. So I opened up the whole world of adult dance, which now, thank God, is opening up even more, and people who haven't had an opportunity to dance as a child suddenly get a chance to, and those people who did dance as a child and felt abandoned like I did, they have a chance to dance again as well. So that's my origin story in a nutshell.
All right, and tell us about your background in writing.
So I also wrote my whole life. I wrote in school. I did a lot of writing in high school, and then I got married and had kids, and I decided that I wanted to stay home with my kids. I wanted to raise them, and I had to figure out a way to make some money because my husband, God love him, he supported us, and he did a great job, and he still does, but we really needed, the little extra diaper money and a little extra, got to buy winter clothes or whatever. So I had to find a way to do that, and writing was just a really natural fit for me. I was able to get into magazines, and then later on I moved into copywriting, which is business writing, doing things like websites and brochures and flyers and things. I learned a lot about marketing from that, and then over the last 3 or 4 years or so, I really switched mostly into writing books. And I've been fortunate enough to work with some amazing people who hired me to ghostwrite their books, and one of them actually has been a New York Times bestseller, and others have gone on to, I can't say which one it was, though, because I have a non-disclosure agreement, which is really frustrating, but, we've had some pretty amazing success with those books, and so I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic because there are so many people and a lot of them have come to me through the Belly Dance Business Academy going, I kind of want to write a book about this topic. Do you think it's okay? And I'm like, of course it's okay. It's fantastic.
Awesome. So let's jump right into books. We are going to talk about writing more broadly, but, there do seem to be so many more new belly dance books coming out lately. I remember when I started 15 years ago, people would collect some of the vintage books that were out that people wrote before everybody had VHS tapes. And so they would buy a book and look at the pictures and try and figure out the movements. And then it seemed like there was nothing for a while.
Yeah, so I remember I bought all those books. Anything that had a remotely Arabic look to it, I would buy because I wanted to check out the costumes and I wanted to look at the pictures and I wanted to look at, I didn't even really read them, but I was looking for the visual stimulation of stuff that I couldn't get any other way. I didn't even have a VHS player. We didn't have DVDs. The internet didn't even exist, right? So we had no way to get those shared experiences. So I would buy these books, but there weren't very many. There were like 3 or 4, and it was really frustrating. I remember when the belly dance book came out, which was probably in the mid-'90s, maybe early '90s. That was a fantastic book because there were essays, and they were short and easy to digest, and they were on a lot of different topics, and I was like, this is fantastic. I really think that people are writing more niche books. It's not just in belly dance, it's in all sorts of niches. But they're finding that they can share their experiences. So like in the old days, in the 70s and 80s, even the 60s, dance evolved, belly dance especially evolved separately. So there was the East Coast style and there was the West Coast style, right? They were completely different. They had different nomenclature. They had different roots and origins and different ways that they performed, and it was separate. And, America versus the UK or Western versus Egyptian or whatever. Everything evolved in its own little small niche areas. And there was not a lot of cross-sharing unless you were lucky enough to have some big star front a lot of money and go and teach a workshop somewhere. And even that was pretty rare back then. So now we can, through books, share our experiences. We can share the different styles and the different backgrounds and the stories that we're getting in some of these books from especially the older dancer generation, people who were performing professionally in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Fantastic books with really cool stories that are very, very interesting that you're not going to get anywhere else. Like you're not going to get, a Netflix show about belly dance history. You're just not going to get that. You might get something on YouTube, but that's hard to produce. But being able
somebody needs to go and do that. Just so you know, if somebody's listening and says, I could do that, please do, because that would be awesome.
Please make a Netflix belly dance channel. That would be awesome. That's just the thing. So what happened was the media that was out there was all instructional for the dance. So it was like DVDs on how to do dance. It was even way back the book, the record. I can't remember who it was that put out the record. Was it Gus Valley? The record with the dance book, How to Be a Belly Dancer. It was a combo pack. It was a CD or a vinyl record, and it had a book that came with it. And I actually bought that, and I was so excited because there was a book, and I just read it cover to cover to cover. And it had costuming in it, and it had dance moves, and it was so cool. But now we have, because publishing is so easy now, and because marketing is so easy now, if an author wants to, she can create a profitable income stream from a book if she knows how to do it right. Like books themselves tend not to make a whole lot of money, but if you have income streams tied to them, then it really can. It can enhance your career. It can enhance how many people buy your DVDs or how many people hire you for workshops. It can also just share information, and I think people are just so happy to be able to share their experiences. That's my take on why there's so many belly dance books.
Excellent. Well, that's a great segue into my next question. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold.
Ooh.
So my next question is closely related to that. Why should dancers consider writing? We always talk about, this is a nonverbal communication. It's all in the body, but there's so much more. So what can writing do for us?
It's really a way to, it's another way to express yourself, right? So we say dance is self-expression, and that's true, but there's so many other ways to fully express dance. Okay, you can express it through music. So a lot of dancers play zills or they become drummers. And a lot of dancers also want to express through the written word. So they write articles. It used to be we could write articles for the magazines, Jarida or Habibi or Zagarit. And that was great, but there's only so much space and there's only so many magazines that go out. So having a blog or having a book or any way that you want to write about your dance is going to help you enjoy that dance more, and it's going to help others, enjoy what you're doing or be drawn to it so they can experience it themselves. And I just think it's a fantastic way to enhance what you're doing, whether you're doing it for business purposes or whether you're just doing it for personal reasons. There's lots of blogs out there that are just personal blogs. Why am I belly dancing? Belly dance at any size. There's some costuming blogs. There's all kinds of different things, different aspects of dance that people are able to express what they want to say through writing.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the other benefits of writing?
So some of the other benefits means you can get your point across, right? You get to teach, you get to draw attention to yourself. So if you are trying to raise a platform or you're trying to get attention for a DVD, maybe you want to write a bunch of blog posts, okay? If you want to attract students for a class, maybe you want to write a series of articles for your local newspaper. There's benefits, personal benefits, and then there's just, the benefits to your business. And really it comes down to attracting attention and broadcasting, because you're broadcasting. When you're writing, you're broadcasting. The same thing as publishing. It's just publishing is written and broadcasting is usually audio or visual, like videos. But really, I think that the biggest benefit is yourself. You get to express what you want to say and what you want to teach. A lot of things that are out there in the writing world as far as dance go are teaching related. So I write to teach marketing and business topics. Other people write to explain how to make a costume. Other people might do it to explain history. But you're teaching, so you're giving back. That's another benefit, is you feel like you're giving back to your community that's given you so much.
Mm-hmm. I think this is one of those things, that I've been thinking about too, as, more and more dancers of my teacher's generation have been retiring, is there's so much information that's in their heads that would come out in classes and workshops, and once they're out of the scene, that's gone.
It's gone.
And when you
really
write,
is.
It's there. Like, even if your book goes out of print and there are only 50 copies floating out around there, those 50 copies can be read by 500 people.
Right, and they can be reprinted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you, depending on what you do, that's something that's important to think about, is if you do put out a book or any piece of media, really, what's going to happen to it after you're gone? Those are things that you want to, this is a whole other topic, but things you want to think about providing for, if you need to, in your will, providing rights, or, who's allowed to do what with your material, because you don't want it to die, especially if you put all the time and effort to create a book. You don't want it to die. You want it to go on, even if nobody finds it for 25 years, but then suddenly somebody, is searching Google and goes, oh, my God, this is fantastic, and they want to reprint it. Who do they talk to? How do they do that? So things like that you want to think about.
Mm-hmm. And, what are some of the different types of things we can write? We've already talked a little bit about the media, right? So we have, the idea of, blogs or books and that kinds of things. But what kind of topics could people cover?
Okay, so there's topics, and then there's, types of writing. So there's blogs and books. There's also social media posts, right? You've got to do that, especially if you're in business. Email, newsletter content. Writing better bios. Huge. Learning how to write just so that you can write a bio or an introduction that is beneficial to you and doesn't bore an audience is really huge. So there's that kind of writing, and then there's topics that you can cover. So besides teaching movement, what else can you do? You can teach costuming. Okay, I always go to costuming because that's what I love to do. You can teach jewelry. You can teach history. You can teach, and I say teach, but you can write about it. It's the same thing in my brain. How about makeup, right? When I started, there was no information about makeup at all. And then somebody put out a DVD, or no, it wasn't even a DVD, it was a VHS. It was like a 2-hour, really awesome VHS, and it came with a book, right? And I paid $50 for that VHS because I needed to learn how to do the makeup. You can write about music. I think I already talked about that. Genres. What are the differences between the genres? If you are if you're exploring a new genre like vintage belly dance or new vintage, that's really stuck in my head. It's an oxymoron. It's a new genre that is vintage belly dance. Or I'm trying to think of other new genres, but maybe tribal fusion or something, which isn't really new. But how does that differ from existing genres? Comparing and contrasting is a great way to get into a topic and say, okay, what does even classical cabaret, AMCAB, belly dance mean now that there are all these other genres? What does this original genre mean? What makes it that? You could do hairstyles. You could do traveling, tourism, right? So you could have an entire book on just destinations to go if you go to Egypt, or a Middle Eastern tour package, where especially if you take people on packages. Imagine the extra business you would get if you had a book about tourist or belly dance destinations throughout Turkey, Egypt, and Greece, wherever.
There is a whole category in the travel business around, I've read this book, I want to go to this place.
Right. I read this book, I want to go to this place. So if you have, and I'm always talking about branching out beyond the belly dance market, because our market is relatively small, and you can attract more people by reaching out to other people with similar interests. So let's say that there's some big popular novel out there that takes place in the Middle East, and it features a dancer. You've got, and if it goes really viral and it's a huge successful book, you can tack onto that book by saying, oh, hey, by the way, here's a book that goes with that, and there's all kinds of keyword ways that you can tack it together. But you would talk about the destinations in the book, or you could talk about the destinations that dancer might have been to, say it was in Egypt, and then you say, in the back of the book, you say, oh, by the way, I lead tours to Egypt. Mm-hmm. That's just huge when you can tack on to a mainstream audience, a mainstream book, and you have your book that goes sort of with it, and you get people to go, oh my gosh, I love this book, and look, here's a tourist book, I want to go there. And then that naturally leads over to your tour. It's just really it's cool how all the connections match up.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of travel, it seems like there's a whole kind of mini genre of like belly dancer travelogues, and I have loved every single one I've ever read.
Yeah, because they're all unique, right? Everybody has a different take on the places. I mean, there's only so many. Well, I shouldn't say there's only so many places, but there are the most popular destinations, and everybody experiences them in a different way. And everybody has different reasons for going. Did you go because it's your college graduation present, or did you go because you've always wanted to go and you turned 75 and you just decided you were going to go, or did you go and want to be a professional and you decided to stay? What is it that takes you there, and what is it that you're experiencing? And help those of us who can't go or who haven't gone yet to see through your eyes, like, what does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? Because dance is all about the senses, right? Especially belly dance. It's very sensual. It's about how movements feel on our body, but it's also how the music sounds to our ears and what the costumes look like to our eyes. So when you were writing, especially in a travelogue to an exotic location, if you can make us feel like we're there in words, that's fantastic.
So one of the things that I think is interesting about the travelogue genre that makes it different from kind of the vast majority of books is that it's not necessarily a teaching topic. Is there anything else that you can think of that people could write if they don't feel like they have anything to teach?
You can go internal, and you can write about what certain pieces of music bring to your mind. So when we think of writing, it's too easy to think of our high school essays, right? I have to have an introduction, and then I have to have 3 paragraphs, and then I have to have a summary, or I have to, write these big, long paragraphs. But you can write in poetry form. I've started writing all my blog posts in one line. Like, my blog post now on Julianne Eason is like one line and an ellipse, because ellipses, the 3 little dots, make your eye naturally move to the next line. And really, I've started thinking in one-line sentences. And a lot of my blog posts they look like poetry. So you could do that. I mean, you could say, here's a song, and here's what it means to me in a poetry format, or here's what it brings to my mind. Or maybe you write a story about a particular piece of choreography that you were doing. So when I was artistic director of our local group here, we did a lot of shows, and we tried to get away from the variety show format. We tried to create stories so that the show was more like a ballet, and it was a full length. It was all belly dance, but there was a story that carried through the whole thing. And so writing the story that went with the music was really cool. Or sometimes we would write the story first, and then we'd try to find the music that went with it. So those are fun. You can also do along those same lines. You can have crowdsourced writing. So maybe you say, here's a short snippet of a story, and put in the comments what piece of music you think would go with that, or put in the comments what you think the next part of the story might be, and you can have an entire community-driven piece of writing that's really, really cool.
Speaking of that, I want to give a shout-out to Terry Allred, who is one of the Circle members who's also worked with Julie, and she put out a great book called I Belly Dance Because, which is a collection of submissions about what belly dance means to individual people. And what I really loved about that was that, a lot of the people who are in that book are not professional dancers, and their stories are sometimes the most compelling. I think that, and the reason I asked about what can we talk about besides teaching is that I think that sometimes we think, oh, these are the big names who need to, share from their high amount of expertise and teach us. But everybody has something to share. Even if you're still a student and you don't feel like you have anything to teach, somebody else in your same situation hearing your experience can get a lot of validation. They can get a lot of ideas. So don't be shy.
Right. And that's a really common theme. It's one of the top 3 objections for writing anything, okay, especially books. People say, I don't have time, which is not true. They do have time. They just have to make it a priority. They say I'm not an expert, or somebody else should be writing this, or there's already 15 books on this topic. It's all the variations of the same theme, which is I'm not the expert. Who am I? Those are those words. Who am I to talk about this or to write about this? And it's part of that comes from the fact that writing is risky because you're putting something of yourself out into the world, and people are going to comment on it. They're going to judge it. They're going to pass it around. And you hope that everybody likes it, but sometimes people don't. And there's all kinds of different reactions that people have to it. So that whole I'm not an expert thing, you just have to realize that an expert is only someone who knows a little bit more than the person that they're talking to. And so sometimes you can have really successful books written by people who are just beginning in a certain industry or a certain topic. So a beginner dancer writing a blog or writing a book about why I started to belly dance and writing their progression. Progression blogs are great for beginners. It's almost like a diary. I mean, blogs really started as diaries. They were online web logs. And it's a personal growth path, and we can see how that person has grown, and we can also say, oh, I had that experience too. Or, I was really nervous about taking a belly dance class, but this person's writing about it, and it sounds really fun. I think I want to go try it. Mm-hmm. So, just because you're a beginner or even if you're an intermediate student, it's totally fine to put yourself out there, to risk, the comments and everything, and to realize that you are an expert in your own experience. You are the only expert in your own experience. So nobody can write about what you want to write about the same way that you will write. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like you're the only one who can do it. So if you want to put it out there because there's other people who can benefit from it.
Mm-hmm. I want to jump back quickly onto what you said about the progression, and that's really, really interesting when you're watching it in real time in a blog. But it's also something that you can share as, like, say, a memoir after the fact. Yeah. So Princess Farhana had a book recently about kind of, her early days as a performer. And a big part of what makes something like that interesting is that progression and that narrative arc. And so even if, no matter where you are in your dance life, whether you're at the beginning or at the end, you can start working with whatever arc you have. And that's just really compelling. Like that's what fiction is based on, except in this case it's real.
Right, and that's what makes it so scary, is that it's real, and that when people react to it, it's personal. People take it personally, and that's really hard for people. But you're right. So there's the memoir aspect of it, and we can look back and we can say, oh, this, if so-and-so, if Princess Farhana can be as huge and glamorous and wonderful as she is, and she's traveling around the world and she's teaching all these things, but look, she started selling DVDs out of the back of her car. She started by having the guts to decide she was going to be a professional belly dancer just because somebody came up to her in the bathroom and said it looked like she had taken belly dance. Like, who does that, right? Her whole life story is all about just having guts and doing stuff, even though maybe it was a little bit scary. And I love the memoir effect because it can encourage you when you're maybe feeling a little burned out. You can look back at your own work, and you can look at other people's works and see where have they been, how did they get there, what was their path. Oh, my path is different. That's okay. Fine.
Absolutely. All right. I also want to jump back a little bit. So we talked a little bit about this, who am I to write this? So why don't we take a little closer look at some of the reasons why dancers don't write? You've already touched on them, but let's talk a little bit more about what they are and why they are bad excuses.
All right, so I'll tell you the why, and I started about a year ago formulating this theory, and I've decided that it's a perfect storm of childhood conditioning of why we make it so hard on ourselves. And the first thing we ever learned to do that was really, really important was learn how to read. And this is cross-cultural. It doesn't matter what country you're in. Your parents read to you, your grandparents read to you, your teachers read to you. All the important people in your life told you that reading books was important and that books were important. We also learned through that same experience that authors were special. We knew all of these authors. We knew Shakespeare. We knew Dr. Seuss. We knew all these people who maybe we never met, but we felt like we knew them and they were our friends because they were authors. So authors were special. Books had all the answers, right? We were told, we were given textbooks and told to study them because there would be a test and all the answers were in the book. Then we get to upper middle school and high school, and what happens? We learn that writing is hard. We learn that writing is something that is judged, it is graded, and even if we get really, we do a really good job and we put all of our heart and soul into it, and we really, really worked hard and we got a good grade, it was still not enough. Like, I don't know why English teachers can't just say, this is perfect, ever once, because what we're taught in school is no matter how good a grade you get, it was still never enough. There was always a little red mark somewhere. Maybe it was just a comment here or there. Maybe it was, they're correcting all of your commas or whatever. So we learned books are important, authors are special, and writing is hard. And that is just horrible conditioning to get adults to write. It's something that you have to unlearn. You have to go back and say, even if I really loved writing, I loved writing in school. I got great grades in English. I loved it. But I still was criticized for it, and I still got in arguments with my English teachers, it was crazy. But what has happened is with the opening up of self-publishing and the fact that you can publish a blog, you can publish, on Kindle, you can publish your own print books, like, the rules almost don't apply anymore. I firmly believe you need to learn the rules. You need to learn some of the grammar rules. You should use conventional spelling most of the time. But everything you learned in high school that was the rules that was made everything so hard, just throw it out the window. Because you can write whatever you want, however you want. The only guideline that you need to follow is, can your audience, the people that you want to read this, can they read it and can they understand it? And if they can, then to hell with your paragraphs and your sentence structure and, your dangling participles and all that stuff. There are ways to tighten up your writing and there's ways to make your writing better. But I would rather see somebody who is passionate about a topic get their work out there and get their message into the hands of the people it's meant to reach than to have them freaking out because they can't figure out if they have a complete sentence or not. Or they're starting their sentences. They're starting their sentences with and, but, or, like I just did. Right? Write like you talk, and you'll be fine. We don't talk in complete sentences. We don't talk in perfectly punctuated sentences. We just talk, and that communication style has become more and more the norm. And writing is starting to reflect that, which is really, really cool. So just don't be afraid of it. Don't make it so hard on yourself, and forget trauma you had back in school, if you, God help you, if you had to write a master's thesis, like, forget it. Lock it in a closet, because that is not the kind of writing that you want to do in the real world.
Awesome. So let's jump into, some of the kind of like practical excuses that people face when they try and write. What are the impediments?
All right. So the first one is, I don't have time. So, okay, everybody has 1,440 minutes a day. Like, we all have the same amount of time. Nobody that I have never heard anyone say, gee, I wish I had less time. We're all busy. Right? Like, everybody's freaking busy. So if you want to write and it's important to you and you know that it's going to benefit your business and you know that, somebody somewhere is going to benefit from your portrayal of whatever, then you need to make it a priority, okay? Time is a matter of figuring out your priorities and then learning tools and systems so that you can do it efficiently. And that's what I teach in my book. The Profitable Business Author is all about, like the first half of it is all about how can you write quickly and efficiently and never get stuck and never wonder what to say. And that's a whole system that I have called question-based outlines. And it revolves around the fact that you can make forward progress in 10 minutes at a time if you do it this way. The time is the huge one. The second one we've already talked about, which is I'm not an expert. Who am I to write this? There's already 25 books on this topic. Why does there need to be another one? Like, why did Dina the Costume Goddess need to write that whole awesome series of costuming books when Dawn Davina Brown had already written them, right? Because they're completely different books. They're on the same basic topic, and they had very similar, like, hand-line drawings and things, but they're completely different books. And people who are passionate about a subject are not going to buy just one book. They're going to buy all of them. Like, how many belly dance books do you have? How many DVDs do you have on shimmies, right? Like, there's only so many ways to shimmy. But I have about 15 different DVDs on it, right? Because you're passionate about it. You want to learn that one little extra thing. You want to hear a different perspective, right? So that whole I'm not an expert or who am I, that's something that you really have to get over and realize that it's a procrastination technique. It's just your mind trying to keep you safe and keep you from doing anything that puts your thoughts and your expertise out there into the world. And it's hard to get over, but once you do and once you realize, the hell with it, I'm an expert. I'm the only one who could talk about it the way that I talk about it. And there are people who want to hear it. Once you get over that, it's really wonderful. It's very freeing. The third big one is...
Can I break in for a sec? I actually want to talk a little bit more about when you and I were first working together, and I was thinking about putting out my first DVD, and you said, do it now, not years from now, do it now. I think one of the big shifts for me in this was going from, okay, well, who am I to do this versus who am I to withhold this?
Right.
Right? If you have something that can help somebody, who are you to decide that it's not time to do it?
Right.
You are doing people a disservice if you don't put it out there into the world.
Exactly. And that's hard to hear. And a lot of people go, yeah, right. Yeah, but I heard that advice for so long, and I still, to this day, have to remind myself of that for some things, because I'm always pushing the envelope on weird projects and things that I'm not really sure are going to work. And I put a lot of time and energy into the creation of the thing, and then it's like when it comes to launching and shipping, what they call shipping, when it comes to putting it out there so that the public can see it, it's like, I don't know about this. I'm all about the creation, and the shipping is the hardest part. But there's somebody said, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was, I want to say the founder of LinkedIn, but I'm not sure. Anyway, some big hooty-hoo marketer dude said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of what you ship, then you waited way, way, way too long. So the first version, that's a beautiful thing about the time we live in right now. Nothing is permanent. Like, you can write a book, and then, 6 months later, you can update it, and it's fine. If you make a mistake or a typo or, you want to add more material or you want to take some material out because it's changed, you can do that. You can amend things in so many different ways that there's no excuse for not just putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
other than fear, which is huge, and a lot of people use it, and it's legit. I mean, fear is a physical mass sometimes that you have to figure out how to get around. But as long as you realize that that's all it is, then you can find strategies for moving around it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's move on to number 3.
So number 3 is, I don't know how to publish, or I don't know how to edit, or I don't know how to get a cover designed, or I don't know how to upload, or I don't know how to get my shopping cart hooked up. Whatever the next technical step is, people worry about those things before they've even done the writing. So especially in books, it's like, I don't know how to publish. I don't have a publisher, therefore I'm not going to write my book. And that's really just putting the cart before the horse. Like you can't bog yourself down. Well, you can, and people do, but you shouldn't bog yourself down with those details that are 10 steps down the road. And this goes with anything. Like, I don't know what the end of this choreography is, therefore I won't write this choreography. Like, no, just start with what you've got. And if it happens to be in the middle, that's fine. But you have to do the job that's in front of you first. And then what happens is magically someone will come along, or a blog post will come along, or you'll see somebody on Facebook mention something that will give you the clue to the next step, or will lead you to the resource that you need to get the next step done. Or you'll just go to Google and you'll figure it out. Like, there is nothing that Google doesn't know right now. And if you need to learn how to do something, YouTube is your best friend. So don't use things like, I don't know how to publish, or I don't know how to set up a shopping cart as an excuse for not writing, because there are always people who can help you, and today they'll help you for free. I mean, there's so many tutorials everywhere to do everything that, there's no reason for that. But people use it as an excuse to avoid the writing, when really what they need to be focusing on is just write the thing. And when you write the thing, and then it's the next step is the editing of the thing. And that's what I'm going to say number 4. Number 3+ is that people try so hard to make their first drafts perfect. And it's a first draft of a choreography, it's a first draft of a video, it's a first draft of a book. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You try so hard to be perfect the first time that you're constantly self-editing and second-guessing yourself, and you never actually finish the thing. When ghostwriters call the first draft a Franken-draft, because it's a mess, and it's supposed to be a mess, and it's okay that it's a mess, but it's done. And once it's done, then you can go back and you can edit, and you can look at the whole thing and say, did I really need this piece of information, or can I leave it out? Or did that piece of information need more explanation? Or is this part here really boring, and I'm just going to, punch it up a little bit with some more dramatic language? You got to have a finished thing before you can objectively look at it and see what needs to be fixed. And it's always a hot mess, and you're never going to be happy with the first draft. So don't try to make it perfect in the first place. Just go. That's what my 10-minute a day, question-based outline, all of the tools that I teach in my book, and in my I have a program called the Nonfiction Book Academy, where I teach all of these strategies. It's like, just get it done, and then we'll worry about making it awesome.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about all 3+ of these, and one thing I really want to call out is that everybody feels these things. Right? It doesn't matter whether you're super experienced in publishing tons of things and putting lots of things out there, or whether you've never done anything. Everybody feels them. I think the only difference is whether you let those feelings stop you.
Right.
Exactly. It's not like, there's some of us who just are like fearless and never worry about anything. It's just, you feel the fear. You say, yes, this is what I'm feeling. I'm going to do it anyway.
Right. How many superstar performers do you know who still get butterflies and throw up before they go on stage? I mean, come on. It's the same thing. It's just, you're never going to get over that. So just, it's going to continue, and that's okay. You can get past it by just saying, okay, I know. And when it's a first draft, if you tell yourself it doesn't matter if it's a complete disaster, I can always not publish it. I think that's a good way to trick your fear. Like, it's a good way to just let it, like, push it to the back of your brain for a little while and let you have the time and the space to finish your first draft. Because you can say, look, if it really sucks and people really don't like it, then I just won't publish it. No big deal. Like, we'll give the fear a little bit of a cookie to chew on for a little while, and then you get your draft done. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to edit this and make it better, and then I'm going to let a bunch of beta readers look at it. So beta readers are like beta testers. They're people who look at it and give you feedback before you put it out into the real world. And you can tell your fear if it comes creeping back in. Just say, okay, well, if the beta readers really think it's just a complete piece of crap, which none of them are going to do that, but if they do, we just won't publish it. You know, you can always just kind of give your fear a little something to chew on and say, it's okay, you know. Or if you're published, and you can say, if I get 10 one-star reviews and all of them say that I should completely dismantle this whole thing and I should take it down because it's horrible on Amazon in a review, then I'll just take it down and it'll be okay. Because none of those things are ever actually going to happen. But you're giving your brain and the back of your head, you're saying, okay, I understand you're afraid of that. And if it's really bad, then we'll be okay. You know, we'll just take it down. Everything can be removed, right? So, and that's you just sort of trick it one step at a time. Let's just take this one next step. Let's just take this one. It's so in the movie Lord of the Rings, you've got like Sam and Frodo are up on the mountaintop, and one of my Nadira's and my mentors, Sean D'Souza, loves this imagery because they've been on this horrible journey and they have so much more to go, and they're like, oh my God, we're never going to get there, and how are we going to get past all of these fighters, and oh my God, we're never going to get this quest done. And it's like, let's just get to the bottom of the hill. Let's just get one step further. And if you do that, and you make that part of the way that you create, and I don't care if you're creating a book or you're creating a dance or you're creating a show or you're creating a business, if you make that part of your creative process, let's just go this one step. And don't worry about all the steps. Don't worry about the fear. Just one more step. Then suddenly it's like your body gets used to it, your brain gets used to it, and it's like, okay, well, we're just going to take one step, and then we can always turn back if we don't want to keep going. But then you don't. You keep going. So I think fear is always going to happen, but you got to figure out a way to get around it. Those are a couple of ways to get around them.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we've talked about how difficult it is just to get started. And, you know, when you and I were kind of talking about our ideas for this call, you know, one thing that you mentioned is that most writers, even really experienced ones, often start in the wrong place. So how do you recommend that people get started?
So, okay, most people start with an idea, and it comes from inside them. This is an introvert-extrovert thing, I believe. So it starts inside them, and like, I want to tell the whole world about my travels to Egypt, and I'm going to tell them about this, and I'm going to tell them about that, and they start creating a big, long outline, okay, because that's how we were taught in school, right? You have this outline, and maybe you were taught with just have a topic and have a bunch of bullet points. Hopefully, that's the sane way to do it. Or maybe you were taught the crazy formatting with the Roman numerals and the little Roman numerals and the letters and the little letters and all the. It's like, oh, the formatting is more important than the content. That drives me crazy. But anyway, I completely lost my train of thought. What was your question again?
What's the right way to get started, or an effective way to get started?
Right. Okay, so people start inside them. They get their idea and they make an outline. And then they write their thing and they put it out there and they hope people like it. And that's the way people have done writing forever. Like, that's just the way they do it. So I come from it from a marketer's perspective, which is let's do some market research first, okay? Let's look outside ourselves. And if your entire, first we start with the goal, okay? We start with why are you writing this piece? Are you writing it to build your business? Are you writing it to attract people to your classes? Are you writing it to get more wedding gigs? Are you writing it just because you've got something boiling up inside you and you really need to get it out there? If it's the last thing, if you just have to get something out on paper, then just write it out on paper, and none of this really matters that much. But if you have a goal, okay, if you want to be eventually booked for workshops around the country, you want to be seen as an expert, you want to, put your opinions out there, then what you've got to do is you've got to figure out your goal, and then you got to figure out your target audience. So your target audience is probably belly dancers, but it might be more specific than that. It might be belly dancers with disabilities. It might be tribal belly dancers. It might be ATS dancers who also happen to like AMCAB. Like there may be a whole bunch of sub-niches. It might be the general public who has never even thought about belly dance. That's a different target audience, and you're going to have to talk to those people differently. So you've got three things that you have to align. You have to align your goal and your target audience and your content. So once you know what you want to happen with the book, you know what your goal is, you know who you're going to write it for, then your content piece, you go outside and you stop thinking about what you want to write and you start talking about what they want to know. And that's the whole key to writing in 10 minutes at a time using questions. Okay, so let me give you an example. This I actually wrote down like a short book outline, so that I could give you an example of how this works. So let's just say that you're into different genres and you want to talk. Your topic is understanding tribal belly dance. Okay, so then you're going to break your topic down into bigger subtopics. So like this is where you're going to have your bullet points. So maybe under a general big topic of understanding tribal belly dance, you might have subtopics like types of tribal, costuming, music, things like that, right? So you just write down your little subtopics. Then you go out and you find out what does your target audience want to know about those subtopics. And you can find those in blogs, you can find them in groups, you can find them, go to Facebook and ask people, what do you want to know about tribal costuming? What confuses you about tribal music, those kinds of things. And they'll tell you, like, what do you want to know? You can survey people. You can look, here's a really, really awesome, like super ninja trick for people who want to write books and actually are doing serious research is you can go to competing books. If there's any other books about the same topic, look at the reviews and look at the negative reviews. Look at what those people are saying that particular book was missing. And then you might want to consider including that in your book, and yours will be better, right? So then you start asking those. You take those questions and you turn your whole outline, instead of it being a bunch of statements under bullet points, you turn them into questions. So types of tribal dance, okay? Maybe you want to have what is American tribal style? When did it start? Where did it start? Why did it start? What is tribal fusion? When did that start? How did it evolve? What's the difference between tribal and ATS, or fusion and ATS? What are they fusing? So you have questions. It's like not what you want to say, but it's what they want to know. And when you write the questions down, it's really easy to answer them because either you already know the answer or you can find out really easily. And questions make our brains work. Our brains automatically try to start answering them. So if you have a question like, how did ATS evolve? You're just going to start writing. If you're an expert on ATS, you're just going to start writing it. You're not going to have to sit there and figure it out. You're not going to have to try to organize anything. You're just going to answer the question. It's a very straightforward way to write. And when you don't know where to start, making sure that your goal, your target audience, and your content are all aligned, you're going to have a great book that a whole lot of people really want to read, rather than something that you hope somebody wants to read or that you're not really sure about it because it's completely from the inside of you. And if you have lots of stories or lots of experiences, or maybe you're writing poetry and you want to include those kinds of things that come from inside of you, you can still include those things. You just have to make sure that the goal and the audience and the content are all matched. So you're not trying to sell a book about tribal to an audience that is only interested in, in cabaret, and you're giving them content that has nothing to do with either one of them. There has to be an alignment. Otherwise, the book's not going to sell and people are going to be confused. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And if I can add something to that, often when, people think market research, they think corporate panels and all this stuff. But just ask on Facebook or in the forums or in your classes or whatever. People love to tell you what their questions are.
Right. And there's even question websites. There's like Quora, Quora, and Yahoo Answers. And if you just type in the keyword belly dance, you'll find out all the questions people are asking because they're on there. Even something as esoteric as belly dance, there's questions on there about it. And the way that, so when I first started developing this system, I had to figure out a way, like, how do you know what questions to ask? All you have to, your brain knows the questions already. You just have to put the interrogative word. So an interrogative word is who, what, when, where, why, how much, when not to, things like that. Any sentence that starts with who, what, when, where, why, how, and ends with a question mark is what you're going for. So all you have to do is think in your head about the topic. So American tribal style, how? How did it evolve? How do we tell the difference? How do we know what a tribal costume is? So like your brain will just start thinking up questions. If you think about a topic and you put that interrogative statement in your brain, it'll just happen. It's crazy magic.
5 things popped into my head while you were saying that.
It's so cool. That's a great way to brainstorm, by the way. If you're just sitting around with a bunch of friends and you want to brainstorm a topic for writing, okay, so here's another thing. When you're writing a blog or you're writing an email newsletter, what's the biggest problem? You run out of ideas, right? You're like, oh God, I have to write something. What am I going to write this month? And it's really frustrating because you're trying to pull something out of you that's not there. But every one of these questions can be broken down into more questions. So if you're talking about how did ATS evolve, that can be an article or even a book all on its own by just asking more questions. So how did ATS evolve? Where did it start? And why did it start? And how did it spread? And how fast did it spread? And where is it found around the world today? And how does costuming affect the dance? And how does the music affect the dance? And what is this whole deal with improvisation? So all of those questions are sub-questions, and then each one of those could be its own topic, and by just asking more questions. You never run out of content when you just ask questions and then sub-questions and then sub-questions. It's amazing how far deep down you can go into one topic.
Mm-hmm. And, when you have this questions approach, like, everything can kind of quickly spiral out of control. Like, this is, fancy problems, right? You think you have no ideas, right? You think of some questions, then you have too much stuff. How do you kind of prune that back down and get it under control again?
That's the alignment issue. So that is keeping your target audience in the front of your head all the time. Is my target audience going to be interested in the details of Carolina Noricchio's personal life or whatever? I don't know. I'm just making this up. I don't know anything about her personal life, but about the founding of ATS, or are they in the history, or are they going to be more interested in how the makeup evolved? And if they're more interested in how the makeup evolved and you have too much content, cut out some of the history stuff. Like, you need to really have a tightly defined goal and a tightly defined topic. And if you end up with too much material, it's never wasted, because when you create a book, just like when you create a DVD, you have to market it. You have to get it out into the world. And that's more than just saying, hey, I wrote a book and here it is and go buy it. You have to create content, more content. You have to create blog posts and email lists, newsletters, and YouTube videos, and there's all kinds of social media content you have to create in order to promote this book enough to the point where it's going to really sell and people are going to talk about it. So it's almost like this momentum building thing is all this extra content. So if you have extra pieces, do not throw it away, for goodness sakes. Save it and use it as a blog post or YouTube videos or whatever.
Or a sequel.
As promotional content. Sorry, I missed what you said.
I said, or a sequel.
Yeah, or a sequel. Absolutely. So the way that fiction writers actually make money is by writing more books. Like, they have to keep writing books or they're not going to make more money. Nonfiction writers are fortunate because they can tie a lot of products and services and programs and all kinds of things to the book, and they can, it's a fairly simple process to get a reader to join your mailing list and then get them to buy something else. Fiction writers can do that, but it's much easier for them just to write more books. So the more books that are out there, the more ways people can find you.
Mm-hmm. And, on a related note, I I think one thing that people who are creating anything, but especially when it comes to writing, have to deal with is kind of this idea that, like, you have to include every single thing in the book or it's not done.
Yes. Yes. That is so hard. And that's one of the reasons people get stuck. Writer's block doesn't happen because you don't know what to say. Writer's block happens because you know too much. You have too many things in your head and they're all trying to get out at once. And you're stuck because you don't know what is the right thing to say at the right time. So, yeah, it's you're definitely right. Like, it's just too much, too many ideas, too many things coming out at once, and it can be a detriment. So, making sure that you keep that alignment in mind. What's your goal? Is this piece of content going to suit that goal, or is it not? Is it extra?
I think one of the big things that I've learned in the last couple of years, too, is that it's okay for not everything to be in there.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's easier for people to read if it's not this huge
thing. Can't read everything. People read differently these days. They read in pictures, they read in videos, they read. You have to write short sentences and short paragraphs, and I mean they just really. They can't read these big, long blocks of text anymore. They need to have it be easy. And so if you try to put everything you know into one piece of writing, it ends up being this big, long, hard thing to read. And I don't know about you, but I will actually I've purchased expensive books, because the title was awesome, and I really wanted to know the information inside. And then I opened the book and I looked at the text, and because it was so dense and there was so much information in there, I didn't read any of it. I couldn't. I tried to get into it, and it's just so much information. It's overwhelming. And so if you have that much writing in you, then you're going to be well served financially and, being self-expression. You're going to be well served to have a blog or have lots of books, a whole series of books, and just really focus each one on achieving a specific goal for the target reader, and then do another one. There's nothing that says you can't produce. Start your own publishing company and produce 50 books.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talked a little bit about people reading differently, and I'd like to dig into this a little bit more. So how can you write so that people actually do take the time to read your content?
So that is all about how our attention spans have changed. We're bombarded with information, and we have to be able to consume it really, really quickly. Even if we're really interested in the topic, we still have to be able to consume it quickly and easily. So the way that you help the reader out is you write in short sentences. You write in short paragraphs. We learned in grade school, a paragraph isn't a paragraph unless it's at least 3 sentences. Baloney. My paragraphs sometimes are 1 line long. Sometimes they're half a line long. It's okay. Like, forget all the rules that you learned and really focus on how is the reader going to consume this content. They have to be able to skim and scan. Most people will skim and scan first, and then they'll decide if they're going to actually read it. So the way that you help people skim and scan is with bolded sub-headlines. So you have a big headline that talks about what the topic is and gets people excited about reading the article or the book. And then you have a paragraph, and then you have a subheadline, and maybe you have a list, and then a subheadline, and then maybe a picture and another paragraph. But you tell the story in 1 or 2 sentence bolded subheadlines that gives them the gist of the whole article or the whole book. Really, it's an article or a chapter. And then if they're really excited about that, they'll go back and they'll read the actual content. But they're not gonna just start at the beginning and read all the way to the bottom. Nobody does that anymore. We skip around. If one part gets boring, we'll skip to the next part. I mean, because we're the TiVo generation, right? Like we don't have to watch the boring parts. We can just fast forward. So that is how people read now as well, and they need to see on the page that it's not going to overwhelm them. If all they see is text, and I tell this to dancers when they create their business websites, If people see just tons and tons of text, they're not going to read it. They're not going to take the time because they can immediately tell that it's going to take too long and they're going to have to work. Nobody wants to work when they read anymore. So another way that you can break up the text is with pictures and captions on the pictures and infographics and charts and lots of like vintage photographs or videos. If you're writing a blog post and you want people to stay on the page and completely read through all of the content, a great strategy is to put a couple of dance videos, because we're talking about dancers, but put videos in your blog posts. There's no reason you can't include all three modalities, text, audio, and video, in one blog post. You totally can. And you can make it interactive by including comments and encouraging comments. So, you got to think about how you like to read. You don't like to work when you read. You don't like to have to think hard. You have to think hard when you go to work. Nobody wants to think hard about dance. So just make it easy on the reader. Make it a pleasure to read. Some people have beautiful language, and they're so talented at describing dance and environments, and they can paint these beautiful pictures with words. I am envious of those people. I'm a teaching writer, and I'm very good at breaking down complicated topics and like teaching how to do them. But I'm not so great at the description and using flowery language and just painting gorgeous pictures. If you can do that, do it. By all means. It's a wonderful skill. But do it in a broken up format so it's easy to read. Maybe you write a paragraph that's 3 or 4 sentences long and then write one sentence. And then leave some white space so that people can breathe. And then launch into your next beautiful flowery passage. But people need to have time to breathe and space to breathe, and it needs to look easy and fun, or they're not going to read it.
And, if you look at, like, modern textbooks, and I'm not talking, like, when I was a little tiny kid, but, like, stuff from, like, the late 90s onward, you will see a lot of white space.
Yep.
A lot of bold and often colored subheads. You'll see pictures. You'll see sidebars.
And summaries.
And it really does make a difference.
Exercises. Yeah.
I mean, like the calculus textbook I had to read in grad school was like from like 1975, and I could barely make it through it. But if you look at like some of the math textbooks that middle schoolers get now, it's very, very visual.
Right. And one more thing is if you are teaching something, find a way to include a story, because if you can include stories either from your past or from pop culture, like Star Wars is an easy one, right? Or maybe popular videos or whatever. Like if you can find a way to incorporate a story into what you're trying to teach, people are going to remember it better. They're going to remember. So, if you're talking about your favorite move or whatever, you could tell the story of Goldilocks and the three belly dancers. One move was too hot, one move was too cold, and then she added a shimmy and it was just right. Like that's just one example of using, an old story that everyone understands, but they're going to remember it because of the story. Whereas whatever it is that you're trying to teach, if it's brand new content and people don't have anything to hook it to, it's harder for them to remember.
All right. And, one more thing that I think is really crucial to all of this is actually showing up and doing the work. We've already talked about, making time is one of the major challenges. So, how do authors find time to write?
Oh, God. Well, okay, first of all, I want to just say that Nadira has a course on how to do this. It's just substitute writing for dancing and make a writing routine because you've got that down. You do really well with that. But writers find time to write, and I am the worst person for this because I procrastinate, I procrastinate laundry, I procrastinate clean, I procrastinate drive, I procrastinate parent. I'm like, I have to be a parent now. I can't write. You just really, there's a bunch of different ways that people approach it. Some of them are like, I am a button chair writer. I have to sit in the chair at 9 a.m., and I have to sit there for an hour. If I write a sentence or I don't write a sentence, it doesn't matter. I have to sit there for an hour. I personally don't resonate with that because my personality is like, oh, hell no, you're not going to tie me to a chair. I can do whatever I want. So, yeah. So for me, I have to have the freedom of choice. I have to say, all right, at some point today, I need to sit down and I need to write 1,000 words. I can choose to do it now. I can choose to do it at lunch. I can choose to do it before I go to bed. I know that my best time for doing it and the easiest and fastest way to do it is to get it done first thing in the morning. But sometimes I don't want to do it first thing in the morning, or sometimes I have to do an interview or something comes up. So, as long as my personality, I know for me, I have to have the choice. And when I have the choice, as long as I get it done, it happens. Some people need to have really strict discipline and they have like timers and everything. And sometimes that works. My favorite way to do it, though, really is using the question-based outline, because even if I only have 10 minutes while I'm waiting for my son to get out of school and I'm sitting in the car, I can look at a question and I can click on my little voice recorder on my phone and I can answer that question, and then I've done some writing. And that's just, creatively using the little bits of time that we have. We all have little bits of time that just go wasted. And if you start to capture those and you have a strategy for using that time to write, it's really, really powerful. So what I like to tell people is when you're speaking, that's a really fast way to write. You're not done once, you can. People will tell you can speak and then get it transcribed and turn it into a book. You can't do that because you don't speak like people read. So you actually do have to go through it and edit it and make it look like a good piece of writing instead of a piece of speaking. But it is a way to get your thoughts down into a quick first draft. And so speaking can be a fantastic way to do it, especially if it's a question-based format and all you have to do is answer the questions. Now, your whole book is not going to be just questions. You're going to fill it with stories and examples and case studies, and you're going to have calls to action that get people to your website, and there's all kinds of things that you're going to want to kind of sprinkle in amongst the questions. And that's a whole, like, here's how to structure a book program. That's a whole other topic. But the questions are the base of your content, and you can do it really quickly in little snippets of time. So knowing whether or not you need the discipline to sit down for an hour, you need the discipline to write 1,000 words, even if it takes 10 hours, or you have the choice to write at some point today, that's great. Whatever your personality is, as long as you know what works for you. And try different ones. Sometimes I have to say, all right, I've got a deadline. I have to sit in the chair. And that's okay too. And then you have to plan for chaos. You have to plan for those days when everything goes wrong, and just say, okay, I didn't write today. That's hard, and I'm bummed that I didn't do it, and I'll do better tomorrow. And that's when having some kind of an accountability partner or an accountability group. If you're really into writing and you really want to do this, I have a free group on Facebook. If you just go to Facebook and you type in Writing Accountability Group, you'll find me. It's tied to my podcast, which is the Successful Author Podcast. But it's just a group of people who go in every morning and they say, hey, I'm going to write 1,000 words, or I'm going to write 500 words. Alia Tabit is in there. She's a belly dancer writing a belly dance book right now. She's in there just cranking away because she's got a place where she can go, and we go, yay, go, you can do it. And then she comes in and says, hey, I wrote 535 words today. So having some kind of accountability, whether it's a group or even just a friend to help you, that really helps too.
Mm-hmm. And if you are trying to do it on a regular schedule, I want to share one of my favorite tips, which is from the practice course that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's that, if you're having a chaos day, but you're still trying to maintain the habit of showing up at the same time or after the same thing. So let's say you write after lunch, and sometimes lunch is at 11 and sometimes it's at 3. But you're having a chaos day and everything is crazy. If you show up and do just the tiniest token practice or token writing on schedule, so it's after lunch, I have to run out and pick up my kids in 10 minutes. If you sit down and write for 2 minutes, you'll be maintaining that habit of showing up, and it makes it much, much easier to show up the next day, even if you only get 2 sentences done.
Yeah, and if you use the question strategy, all you have to do is say, I'm just going to open my computer and read the question. I don't have to write. I just have to remind myself what the question is. As soon as you read the question, your brain is automatically going to spit out the answer because it can't help it. That's just what questions are designed to do. So that you're going to have a hard time not writing when you just sit down and read the question. It's like, oh, I know this. I'm just going to answer it real quick. And then, an hour later, you've done all your writing.
Absolutely. But even if you do only get in 5 and 10 minutes here and there, if you're actually showing up on a regular basis, that can be
huge. And if you're speaking, people speak generally at 100 words a minute, and we type way slower than that. So if you're comfortable speaking into your phone, you can get a lot of writing done, or at least a lot of ideas down just by speaking, because you speak so much faster.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that we haven't really talked about is, this idea of publishing, and we touched on it a little bit because it's, we talked about how it's easier than ever to get books out. I think a lot of people are still thinking that, you need to meet up with one of the big publishers, and it's almost like this idea of I'm going to go to Hollywood and get discovered. But
yeah.
Everything has changed since then. So can you tell us about, some of the different ways to get your book out there?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So there's basically 4 ways to do it, and there's really only one way in my mind, but there's 4. The first way is traditional publishing, which is you get an agent, you get them excited about your book, and then you go to the agent takes it to not Barnes and Noble, to Random House or Simon and Schuster, takes them to a big publisher in New York, gets them to say, okay, yep, we want to publish this, we want to get behind it, and they sign a contract, and it takes 2 freaking years. And you might get a contract, you probably won't get you won't get an advance like they used to give advances. So it costs about $10,000 to produce a book from a traditional publisher's perspective. So they have to know that they're going to sell at least 10,000 copies of your book in order to even consider publishing you. Before they even look at whether you can write or not, it's like, how big is that person's platform? How many people are on their social media? How often do they email their list, and how big is their list? So the traditional publishers are all in it for the profit. They have got to know they're going to sell a lot of books. Most books don't sell more than 100 or 200 copies, if that. I mean, millions of books are published every year, and most of them sell nothing. So the publishers are very, very careful, and it's hard to get a gig because there's money involved. They have to put up the money, and they have to know that they're going to make a profit. So the opposite end of the spectrum is self-publishing. And self-publishing is just what it says. You do all the work yourself. Instead of the publisher hiring an editor, you hire an editor. Instead of the publisher hiring a cover designer, you hire a cover designer. The beauty in that is that you get to control the cover, and you get to control the interior design and the editing and everything. When you have a professional publisher, a traditional publisher, they're in charge of everything, and you get no say. If they don't want your cover idea, they're going to make their own cover idea, and you don't get to say anything about it. They also have complete control of the manuscript usually, which means when they're done printing it, and nothing you say or do is ever going to get another copy of that book printed, which is really frustrating. And the other drawback to traditional publishing is that you're doing all the marketing anyway, so why should you not get all the profits, right? So self-publishing means that you do all the work, you pay upfront for all the costs, but you also get all the return. Now, the drawback to self-publishing is that you don't know anything about publishing. You don't know what a good cover looks like. You don't know what an interior design looks like. You don't know that every chapter should start on the right side of the page, and that certain things should go on the top of the page, and certain things. There's all these little rules of publishing that nobody knows unless you're in that business. So self-publishers got a really bad reputation for putting out low-quality books because they didn't know any better. They just put out anything that they wrote, and they didn't have them professionally edited, and there's all kinds of horrible grammar mistakes, and it was really hard to read. So that's the other end of the spectrum. There's 2 really good choices in the middle. One is called hybrid publishing, where you pay half of that $10,000 cost. So usually you pay about $5,000, and you have a professional publisher help you do the publishing. So they have their own editors, and they will edit for you. They have their own designers. They will give you a cover design, but you get to input into it because you're sharing in the cost, and you also share in a lot more of the revenue. So your royalties are much higher with a hybrid publisher. It does end up costing you probably $10,000 to $15,000 by the end of the day because you have to buy a certain number of copies usually, and there is a big upfront cost. So most belly dancers probably not going to go that way either. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to self-publish under your own name. And you're creating your own publishing company. So when I say your own name, I mean your own business name, not your own dancer name. So maybe you want to have Middle East Publishing or something like that. You don't want to have your actual physical name attached to it because that's going to look like it's self-published to a bookstore or to anybody who's important and looking at something like that. So all you really have to do, the process to create your own publishing company is really simple. You just buy your own ISBN, which is that little number and barcode on the back of every book. And you can buy your own on a website. It's like $100. It's not that big a deal. And then you upload through either CreateSpace if you want to be published on Amazon, or you upload through a place called Ingram Spark or Ingram, and they are the largest distribution company. I'm going way into this, probably deeper than we needed to. So there's a lot of different ways that a lot of different things that have to happen, but the biggest thing you want to watch out for is, yes, self-publishing is awesome, but try to get some input from people who know what they're doing, so that you don't look like a complete self-published newbie who doesn't know what they're doing. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You do want to spend a little bit of money on editing and a little bit of money on cover design. But other than that, you really can do the self-publishing, use a publishing house name, and you're good to go. There are a lot of really talented belly dancers who also do graphic design and who have done book covers. So if you want to do a book, I strongly suggest you look at the books that are out there by belly dancers and look. Like Princess Farhana has a dancer who does all her graphic design, I think, and her cover design and her interior layouts, and you can totally keep all the money inside the belly dance community when you're hiring out for designers and editors and things. So that's a fun thing to do too.
Mm-hmm. And since you mentioned CreateSpace and Ingram, I want to point out one thing, and that CreateSpace at least has print on demand, which means that you don't necessarily have to buy boxes and boxes and boxes of your physical books and ship them. They can actually be made as people order them.
Yeah, so that absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. So CreateSpace and Ingram both have print-on-demand services. Ingram is the largest distributor for bookstores. They also will sell to Amazon. CreateSpace is only for Amazon, and if you want to, you can do extended distribution, which is through Ingram. So it's these two companies that really cross back and forth. And honestly, for the quality of your book and all of those kinds of things, it really doesn't matter which one you go with. Most people go with CreateSpace in this particular community because it's just easy. It's right there. There's not a lot of crazy information you have to read to figure it out. You just follow the directions on the web form and you upload your stuff and you're good to go.
Awesome. We have covered so much, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions. But before we open that up, people take one thing away from this call. What do you want that to be?
I want them to know that they can do it. Like, if you want to write, just do it. Don't worry about the rules that you learned. Don't worry about the fear. Just people, there's a message inside you. Everyone is born with something that they need to say. And if you're compelled to say that in writing, then just do it. And don't worry about what you think it's supposed to look like or what it's supposed to sound like. Just put it out there. And when you get feedback, which you will, and if some of it is great, take it and enjoy it and save it. If some of it is not so great, realize that maybe that particular person was not in your target audience. That not everybody's going to resonate with what you have to say, but the people who do resonate, sometimes you can wind up changing their lives. And this is what I tell all of the people that I work with in the business world is, you have no idea how many people your book is going to reach and how many lives that your book is going to change. But if it only changes one person's life, then it's completely worth it. And, you just have to keep that in the back of your head. You have no idea the ripple effect that you're going to have, but it's going to be there, and you're putting good out into the world.
Awesome. All right, so why don't we open this up for questions and answers? If you'd like to pick Julie's brain, we've got some time to do that. So if you are on the webcast, if you're just listening in your browser, you can type in your question in the question box on the right-hand side. So you click on the little button that looks like a question bubble, and that will pop out a little panel where you can type that right in. And if you are on the phone or on Skype, you can press ** to unmute yourself. So that's ** on your phone or ** on the Skype keypad, which might be different from just pressing the buttons on your keyboard. We would love to hear from you. So if you've got questions or if you want to share what your favorite thing that you learned was, we would love to hear it.
Or just say happy birthday to Nadira in the Geek Clubhouse.
We've got nothing yet, but we've actually got quite a few people on the call today. So how about this? So, looks like we've got a caller from possibly from Fresno. Hi there. I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, this is Kay Campbell. And
Hi.
Hi there. I wanted to thank you for an amazing program. This is absolutely wonderful. And I wonder if I was taking notes very carefully. I'm wondering if you have a view about one of the hybrid publishing firms called She Writes. I don't know if it would really be appropriate for folks who are writing, in this particular space, but because it's an example of one of the many hybrid forms that have developed now. So I'm curious if you have a view on them in particular.
I've never heard of them. I work mostly in the business world, and there are very specific hybrid publishers that we use all the time. Is there anything that makes them stand out that you have a question about, or is there anything about their business model that you're wondering about? Because I just don't know anything about them in particular.
Okay, they're focused on fiction. So I guess my follow-up would be, what are the names of some of the hybrid firms that you might recommend to this group? That'd be great.
Yeah, so there is my favorite one, and the one that published my book most recently is Influence Publishing, and they're in Canada, in Vancouver. And the head of that company's name is Julie Salisbury. And if you I can send personal interest. They're closed to submissions technically now, but Julie said, if I have anybody I want to send over, I can just send a personal introduction and they'll, take a look at things. They love to publish self-help and health issues, and you want to go look at their website. Here's the thing about publishers is they all have their own niches that they like to publish in. So if you're going to publish a dance book, you probably don't want to go to a business publisher. But you might want to go find an arts publisher, or you might want to find a publisher who does general interest. So for the belly dance world, I know that Influence Publishing would probably be a great place to start. They are wonderful to work with. They do really high quality work. And let me see if I can think of any other ones. There's I don't think so. So everything that's coming to my brain, they're all entrepreneurial publishers, and they're not really in the art space. But what you want to do is, if you're looking up a hybrid publisher, you want to look at their sales, look at their genre that they publish, look at how often they put out a book, and maybe even order one of the books that looks interesting and actually receive it in the mail and see what it feels like. What does it look like? Does it look like a book you would find in a bookstore? Because if it doesn't, then you don't want to use them as a publisher, because you're investing hard-earned money as well as hard-earned time and effort into putting your book out there, and you want it to be amazing. You want a high-quality book. And there's thousands of publishers out there, and a lot of the hybrid publishers are all owned by, the same company. You would never know it, but there's one company who used to be the one that did all of the self-publishing, and they started 1,000 different individual author solution houses, and they have all of these programs, but all the money goes back to this one company, and a lot of them are really, the quality is not good. So just look at their books online and maybe even order one, especially if it's an interesting topic to you, and just see what their process is.
Oh, great suggestion. Thank you very much. It's a great
You're
program.
Welcome.
Thanks
And
very much.
if anybody who's listening to this wants a personal introduction to influence and Julie Salisbury, just shoot me an email at julie@bellydancebusinessacademy.com, and I'll just send you an introduction.
Thank you.
Awesome, and thanks for the question, Kay. For anybody who's listening, if you don't know, Kay was actually our guest last month. She was talking about collegiate dance. So if you'd like to hear more about what she has to offer, check us out in the archives. All right. Would anybody else like to ask a question or share their favorite learning? Okay, I'm not getting anything just yet. We must have covered that in plenty of detail.
There's a lot.
We do have a caller. Hi there.
Hi, this is Chava calling from California.
Hi, Chava. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Well, what I did get out of this talk that I can do it, and can I share an experience about why I wanted to be on this call?
Please do.
So I'm not a professional, I'm a student, and I was in my dance class on Monday, and I got an idea that came out of nowhere that because I survived trauma sexual trauma, and it interferes with belly dancing, it makes belly dancing hard, and it also, belly dancing is how I heal, and I thought that I'm sure there are other people with this experience. I should start a blog or something so that we can support each other.
That's a fantastic idea.
Mm-hmm.
Then I happened to ride the train home with somebody from the class that I had not really talked to very much, and just kind of out of the clear blue, she started talking about trauma and how belly dance is healing her and how it's difficult. And then the next day, I got Nadira's email that this writing workshop was happening. So
it's providence.
It seems like it. And then listening, I think I can totally do this. So I thank you for that.
Yay, I think you can do it too. And listen, a lot of people who want to share their own personal stories, it's like the book that Terry Allred produced or brought together, the I Belly Dance Because. It was just a bunch of, if you haven't read that book, go find it on Amazon and get it because it's beautiful. And you can see that what she did was she collated stories. She had her story, but that's not enough for a book. But if you feel like this story and this topic is so really, really important, and I kind of got chills, so I think maybe it is, and you want it to be in a format that is widely distributed like a book, you may want to reach out to some other people and say, are you interested in sharing your stories of healing through belly dance? I wouldn't focus so much on the trauma because people are going to be worried that their trauma story it's hard to share those stories. Some people might want to, and that's great, but when you just reframe it in the form of how did you heal from something? How did you heal from your trauma using belly dance? Then this kind of opens up a whole opportunity for them to share their story, share their experience, share how they approach this same topic. And that way you don't have to come up with an entire 200 pages worth of content when maybe your story is big enough for that. Maybe it's not. But if it's not, you can absolutely reach out to other people. You could even reach out to experts. So you could tell your story, and then you could go out into the psychology world or into I don't know if there's such a thing as a trauma world, but, people whose main job it is to help people heal this way, and ask them, what are some of the other ways? How does movement heal other kinds of trauma? So there's all kinds of ways you can have other people contribute to something to create a longer work that is going to be commercially viable as a book rather than just a blog or a Facebook post or something.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Good luck.
And keep us posted on the project. If you do end up with a public blog, we can share that with the rest of the group if you'd like to invite other people to read it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's
Awesome.
another point. That just brought something into my head as far as marketing goes. One of the reasons that I think there's so many belly dance books right now is because so many belly dance books are being really successful. And the reason I think is because we are such a tight niche. And in the greater scheme of things like baseball, football, NASCAR, whatever, we're a pretty small community. And when somebody puts out something that's really amazing, everybody talks about it, and everybody wants to get it, and everybody wants to support the next big project. So you almost have this really cool advantage in having a tight, small market, in that if it's a good product, people are going to talk about it, and they're going to spread it around, and you're going to have maybe more success than if you had a mass appeal, kind of bigger, broader topic. So that's just kind of cool. You can just put one thing in a Facebook group about belly dance, and then suddenly the whole belly dance world knows about it.
Mm-hmm. So, which another thing's jumping into my head. If you're not already in touch with Alia Thabit, who Julie mentioned earlier, I have done some pre-reading for some of her stuff, and I know that she does sometimes touch on trauma and healing, so she might be a great person to get in touch with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know her?
I'm sorry, could you tell me her name again?
Alia Thabit, Aliathabit. She's in Vermont.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. And if you have trouble finding her, drop me an email, and I'll put her in touch with you.
Okay. Thanks,
Awesome.
Nadira, and congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Hava. That was great chiming in. All right. So are there any more questions tonight? You can press ** to unmute yourself, or type it in on the webcast. Okay, that might be it for tonight. Although the last two times we've got another caller.
Oh, that's the last time you said that.
Every single time. Awesome. Hi there.
Hi, this is Dawn from Wisconsin.
Hi, Dawn. How are you?
Good. It's actually the first one I've been able to actually call in and listen to live, so this is great. Quick question. I know sometimes people used to write in for newspapers and submit articles and things, and I know it's kind of becoming slightly an archaic form as we move on through technology. But I kind of live in an area that's kind of a dead zone for culture up here in northern Wisconsin. But I like to try to obviously promote classes and things that people are doing and trying to make it a little more culturally diverse, obviously for belly dance and things. But it's being that it's kind of a dead zone. Do you have any suggestions for approaching, say, newspapers and local magazines and making them a little more receptive to printing things? Because normally they obviously have the negative perception of belly dance, as unfortunately a lot of people that aren't familiar with it do. So they're more reluctant to print.
So there's a couple different ways you can approach people. First of all, approaching newspapers and writing in newspapers and magazines and your local weekly what's going on in town kind of things. I live in Maine. I live in the middle of nowhere, so even we have those things. They're great ways to drive traffic to class. Great ways. What you need to do is think about, this is the same thing we just talked about alignment. The goal, which is to get students in your class, the target audience, which is the general public, and the editor at the newspaper, and what your content's going to be. So it has to make sense. You can't go into super crazy esoteric topics about, collegiate belly dance and its meaning in modern post 9/11 America. You can't do that kind of stuff in the newspaper, right? So you have to make sure there's that alignment. But what you want to do is you want to think about what they need. What they need is reliable content, well written, that they don't have to screw around with, and they can just print it because they're too damn busy to do anything. So if you can either send a press release through, just send a press release straight to the editor's desk. That's one way to do it. And another way to do it is just to make personal connections. If you're in a small enough town, you can connect with the editors. We have the local morning show disc jockey eats dinner down the street at the diner, and you can just go up to him and say, hey, what do you think about this topic? And he'll be like, yeah, that's great. Come on down on Monday. And, and all of a sudden you've got a radio show. So, if you can do that, that's great. If you know people who know them and you can get warm introductions, that's great too. What you want to do is find out who edits that section of the newspaper or the magazine or whatever. And you want to pitch them topics that they're going to be interested in. What's coming up right now is the holidays, okay? So thankfulness for Thanksgiving, you could pitch an idea about how you can give gratitude to yourself through dance, maybe, okay? Maybe you could have an idea that would go through the Christmas or Hanukkah gift-giving season where it's something like how you can give a gift that lasts all year long and doesn't clutter up your closet, like give a gift of dance classes. And as soon as January 1st hits, it's New Year's resolutions, which I call the fitness season. And then you've got all your stories about how belly dance is a great way to get fit when, you're sitting on the couch, or if you want to be more feminine or whatever. Breast Cancer Awareness Month, great time to pitch femininity issues and how belly dance can help those kinds of things. So when you can tie, and I have, in Belly Dance Business Academy, we have an entire module on how to do this and how to write a press release and everything, but you want to tie what you're trying to sell, the idea you're trying to sell, which is come to my belly dance class, with something that's already happening, whether that's Christmas or the fitness season or wedding season or bikini season or whatever it is, walk off the weight, all those kinds of things. Tie it into what's happening, and you're going to get coverage because they know they need some more stories on Christmas, and they're so tired of the same ones over and over and over again. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
Awesome. Great question, and thanks for calling. I'm glad you made it this time.
Me too. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. Any other questions? Star to unmute yourself, and maybe I won't hang up on you by accident or interrupt you. Trying to decide how many counts to give it.
3, 2.
All right. Well, Julie called it, so I think we will call it a night. So there's a most important question, and that is, Julie, if people want to jump right in and learn more from you on this, how can they do that?
All right. Well, we've already mentioned Belly Dance Business Academy a bunch of times. That's where you can learn about belly dance. If you want to learn about writing and specifically about writing books, all of my writing information is on my website, julieanneeason.com. Julie, JulieAnneeAson. There's a whole lot of E's in there. .com. And there are a few things on there. There's my book, which you can get for free plus shipping right now. If you jump on the bandwagon, you can grab that for I think it's $7 shipping, and the book is free. You can also get access to my podcast, which is the Successful Author Podcast, and that gives you all kinds of writing and mindset and marketing and publishing tips from all the experts. So it's like the Belly Dance Geek Clubhouse for writers.
And then Princess Farhana was on that, wasn't she?
Yes, Princess Farhana was totally on that, and we had a blast talking about memoir. It was fantastic. That was really, really early on, so if you want to look at her, listen to her episode, it's like number 3 or 4, somewhere in there, really early. And then there's also, I have a quick start book writing course that you can sign up for free, and that's the very first thing that you'll see. You just put your name and email in the box, and I will send you a 6-part video course on how to start writing your book.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Julie.
You are so welcome. I love hanging out with you guys.
Awesome. And I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsor, Remedy. So don't forget to check out her 3 business ebooks for dancers on hosting workshops, being a dance teacher, or starting your own dance studio. And remember, those are all based on inspiration from Julie, so you want to check those out at rockon.net. That's RAQ-ON.net, and that's under store books for professional dancers. I'd also like to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the Belly Dance Geek world. In November, I am co-hosting the Compassionate Critique Salon with Rosa Noreen and Alia Thabit, who we've mentioned a couple times already on this call. So you can get the objective, constructive feedback you need on your dancing from a panel of 3 kind and experienced coaches. It all happens online, so you can join us from anywhere in the world. And there are 2 ways to participate. You can either submit a video of yourself dancing and get a personal critique, or you can just join us and watch and learn from everybody else's critiques. We will be opening up registration in about a week, so go ahead and join the waiting list now. That's at bellydancegeek.com/compassionate-critique salon. And thank you, everybody, for coming. This is the end of our call, but that doesn't mean that the conversation has to end. We've got a private Facebook group just for Clubhouse members. I'll send out an email in a few minutes with an invitation to that. There is an approval delay on the Facebook group, just to make sure that we only have dancers in there and no crazies. I do have to approve your request, so there may be a delay of up to a day or two before you can start posting. My email will also include a link to the call recording if you want to go back through this and get out some more treasures, as well as a link to some of the resources that Julie mentioned. I'll include a survey to ask you for some feedback. And I run the Clubhouse, but it's really for all of us. So if you have any ideas for topics or speakers or improvements that I can make, I would love to hear about it. Our next call is coming up on Tuesday, November 17th, and my guest is Master Costumer Shadia Tomi, who's going to talk about costuming for all body types. And the last
she needs to write a book about that.
Yes, she really does. She's amazing. And, finally, this is the come on in kind of Clubhouse, not the no loud kind. So if you know somebody who would enjoy these calls, you can invite them to join us at bellydance.com/clubhouse. And until next time, happy dancing.
Bye-bye,
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for listening. For more geek-tacular resources, visit bellydancegeek.com.